Hey warriors, there's a man sitting on a park bench right now who would trade everything he has for one thing: your youth. Not because he's old, not because his body is failing, but because he just realized, at 78 years old, that he never actually lived. He spent 60 years being perfect, and perfection killed him while he was still breathing. I'm not going to tell you his name because he's not one man. He's a million men and women who all made the same catastrophic mistake. They thought perfection was the goal. They thought being flawless was success. They thought if they just got everything right, life would reward them. Instead, they got to the end and realized they'd been chasing a ghost while their real life evaporated. This man had dreams at 18, real dreams, the kind that made his heart race and kept him up at night. But he told himself to wait until he had more money, more experience, more certainty, more perfect conditions. He waited through his 20s, his 30s, his 40s, his 50s, and now at 78, those dreams are still just dreams, ghosts haunting him with what could have been. Carl Jung said perfection belongs to the gods, but this man didn't listen. None of us do. We keep reaching for divine standards with human hands and wonder why we feel empty. Here's why this matters to you right now, in this exact moment. You're not 78 yet. You still have time. But every single day you spend chasing perfection is a day you're choosing his path. And trust me, you don't want to end up where he is, sitting alone with a heart full of regrets and a life that looks good on paper but feels hollow in your chest. Today, I'm going to show you 7 specific ways this man destroyed his own life by being perfect. Not to depress you, not to scare you, but to save you from making the same mistakes. If your heart is tired of being quiet, if your dreams are tired of being delayed, and if your soul is tired of pretending everything is fine when you're breaking inside, then speak for yourself today. Stand up for your life. Say it with strength, not fear. I choose courage. Number 1. He waited for perfect timing until time ran out. At 23, this man had a fire in him. He wanted to start a business. Nothing massive, just something meaningful, something that mattered to him. He could see it clearly, the work he'd do, the people he'd help, the life he'd build. But the voice came, that careful, reasonable voice that said, "Not yet. You need more experience, more money, more connections. Wait until you're really ready." So he waited. He got a safe job instead. Told himself he'd save money first, learn the ropes, build a foundation. He'd start his business when the time was right. At 35, he had the money saved, but now he had a mortgage, a car payment, responsibilities. That voice came back. "Not yet. You can't risk everything now. You have too much to lose. Wait until things are more stable." So he waited. At 48, the kids were grown. The mortgage was almost paid off. He could do it now. But that voice whispered again, "You're almost 50. Isn't it too late to start something new? Shouldn't you just focus on retirement? Wait until you have more security." So he waited. At 63, he retired. Finally, had all the time in the world. But his body was tired. His energy was gone. His fire had burned out years ago. The business he dreamed of building? It existed only in his mind, a monument to all the perfect moments he waited for that never came. Here's the brutal truth he learned too late. Perfect timing doesn't exist. It's a myth, a mirage, a lie we tell ourselves when we're too scared to admit we're just afraid. The right time isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a decision you make. It's saying, "I don't have everything figured out, but I'm starting anyway." People who do remarkable things don't wait for perfect conditions. They start in garages, in spare bedrooms, with borrowed equipment and shaking hands. They launch during recessions. They create while working full-time jobs. They begin when everyone says they're crazy, because they understand something this man never learned. Action creates clarity. You don't think your way into a new life. You live your way into one. Every day this man waited, he told himself he was being smart, responsible, mature. But what he was actually doing was choosing comfort over courage, safety over growth, fear over faith. And the cost? 60 years of unlived potential. The right time was 23 when he first had the dream. The right time was 35 when he had the savings. The right time was 48 when he had the freedom. The right time was every single day he woke up with breath in his lungs and the ability to choose differently. But he kept waiting, and waiting became his life. Now, at 78, sitting on that bench, he'd give anything to go back and start messy, start imperfect, start scared, just start. But he can't. His perfect timing never came, and now his time is gone. Don't be him. Don't spend your life waiting for a moment that doesn't exist while the moments you actually have disappear. If you know you've been postponing your dreams, if time is slipping while you keep saying one day, then this is your moment. Don't wait for perfect. Don't wait for permission. Say it now. The right time is now. Number 2. He let being realistic murder his dreams. This man became an expert at killing his own dreams with logic. At 29, he wanted to take a year off to travel, to see the world beyond his small town, to experience life outside the routine he'd already fallen into. But the realistic voice came, you can't just abandon your career. What about your savings? What about stability? People who do that end up broke and desperate. Be realistic. So he stayed, told himself he'd travel later, when he could afford it properly, when it made financial sense. He never went. At 37, an opportunity came to join a startup with people he admired. The work was meaningful, the mission excited him, but the pay was less, and the risk was real. The realistic voice said, you have bills, responsibilities, a family. You can't just chase dreams like a child. Be realistic. So he stayed in the safe job, the one that paid well but hollowed him out a little more each year. At 51, he met someone who made him feel alive again, someone who saw him for who he really was, not just the role he played. But he'd been alone so long, built such thick walls. The realistic voice whispered, you're too old for this. What if it doesn't work out? What if you get hurt? What if people think you're foolish? Be realistic. So he said nothing. She slipped away, and he spent the next 27 years wondering what might have been if he'd been brave enough to try. Here's what this man never understood. Being realistic wasn't wisdom. It was fear in a business suit. It was cowardice making reasonable-sounding arguments for a small, safe life. Every time he chose realistic, he was really just choosing scared. The psychologist Abraham Maslow said, we can choose safety or growth, and growth must be chosen again and again. But this man always chose safety. He called it being realistic, being responsible, being smart. But what he was actually being was afraid, and he let that fear steal 60 years of possibility. Think about the word realistic for a second. Who decides what's realistic? Who wrote the rule that protecting yourself from failure is more important than pursuing what makes you feel alive? Who determined that realistic means settling for less than what you actually want? Because here's what's actually realistic. You're going to die. That's realistic. You have one life, and it's already half over or more. And every year you spend playing it safe is a year you'll never get back. That's realistic. The biggest risk isn't trying and failing. It's living so carefully that you never really live at all. That's realistic too. This man protected himself right into a life of quiet desperation. He avoided failure so successfully that he also avoided success, joy, adventure, love, meaning, purpose, everything that makes life worth living. He was so busy being realistic about what could go wrong that he never discovered what could go spectacularly right. At 78, looking back, you know what he realizes. Every single thing he called realistic was just an excuse. The travel, he could have done it. The startup, it might have changed his life. The woman, she was the one. But he chose the comfort of his fears over the uncertainty of his dreams, and he called it wisdom. Real wisdom isn't avoiding all risk. Real wisdom is understanding that the biggest risk is living a life so safe, so small, so realistic, that you forget you were born capable of remarkable things. Real wisdom is knowing you're going to die someday. And the question isn't whether you'll make mistakes, it's whether you'll make them while truly living or while hiding behind excuses. Don't let fear dress up as realism and steal your life. Don't let the scared part of you make all your decisions and call it being responsible. Be realistic about what really matters. You have one shot at this, one life. And spending it being realistic about why you can't pursue what you actually want is the most unrealistic, impractical, wasteful thing you could possibly do. If you feel the weight of years lost, if you know fear has been masquerading as wisdom in your own life, then let this be the moment you refuse to let excuses rule you any longer. Don't wait for the perfect reason. Don't wait for someone else's permission. Say it now. Fear is not wisdom. Number 3. He sacrificed his soul for others' approval. At 41, this man finally decided to try something he'd always loved. He signed up for a painting class. He'd spent his whole life in museums feeling something stir in his chest, something that whispered, you could create too. It took him decades to get the courage to actually try. The first class was in 3 days. He mentioned it at work during lunch, just casually, trying to hide how excited he was. His colleagues laughed. Not mean laughs, just dismissive ones, the kind that say, that's cute, but come on, be serious. One said, painting? At your age? Isn't that kind of, I don't know, impractical? Another added, my kid does that in elementary school. And just like that, something inside him died. He cancelled the class that afternoon, never tried again, never picked up a brush, lived another 37 years without discovering if those whispers in the museum were telling him something true about himself. Because 3 people whose opinions shouldn't have mattered more than his next breath told him his dream was silly. This is how this man lived his entire life. He chose his career because his father said it was respectable. He stayed in his hometown because his mother said leaving would be selfish. He dressed a certain way, spoke a certain way, lived a certain way, all carefully calibrated to meet the expectations of people who weren't even paying attention. And here's the cruelest part. Those people didn't care. They offered their opinions casually, thoughtlessly, and moved on with their lives while he spent decades living according to their throwaway comments. They weren't malicious. They just didn't understand that their casual words were building the prison he'd live in forever. Think about how insane this is. You get one life, one miraculous, temporary, impossible life, and you're letting people who won't even remember these conversations determine how you spend it. You're letting someone's offhand comment about what's practical override the deepest callings of your own soul. The opinions that held this man back weren't from people who'd achieved what he wanted to achieve. They weren't from people living the lives he wanted to live. They were from people just as stuck, just as scared, just as trapped as he was. And he let them define his possibilities. James Baldwin said, "When you stop letting others define your reality, you become dangerous to the systems keeping you small." But this man was never dangerous. He was obedient, compliant, acceptable. He spent 60 years being everyone's version of good and no one's version of authentic. He was a good employee, a dutiful son, a respectable member of society, and a complete stranger to himself. He followed every rule, met every expectation, earned every approval, and ended up with a life that looked good on paper but felt empty in his chest. At 78, you know what haunts him most? Not the colleagues who laughed at painting. They don't even remember that lunch. Not the father who pushed him into the wrong career. He died 20 years ago. Not the mother who guilted him into staying. She never even knew what she took from him. What haunts him is himself. The fact that he gave them the power. The fact that he chose their approval over his own dreams. The fact that he spent 60 years asking permission from people who had no right to grant it. Your dreams don't need anyone else's permission. Your life doesn't require committee approval. The only person who has to live with your choices is you. And when you're 78, the opinions of that colleague, that family member, that friend who called you impractical, none of it will matter. What will matter is whether you honored yourself or betrayed yourself to please people who weren't even keeping score. Stop giving other people authority over your one precious life. Stop letting their fear-based opinions determine your destiny. Stop waiting for approval that will never feel like enough. Your dreams don't need validation. They only need your courage. If you've spent too long bending for others, if you're tired of letting approval dictate your choices, then let this be the moment you reclaim your life. Stop asking permission. Start honoring yourself. Say it now. My life, my choice. Number 4, he confused comfort with happiness. At 38, this man's life ran like clockwork. Same breakfast at the same time, same commute down the same streets, same desk, same tasks, same lunch at the same diner, same evening routine, same television shows, same weekend patterns, year after year after year. And he told himself this was good, this was stability, this was what responsible adults were supposed to want. But there was this one moment, he remembers it like it was yesterday, driving home on a Tuesday evening, and the sunset broke through the clouds in shades of gold and crimson that made his heart physically ache. And for just a second, something cracked open inside him. A voice whispered, "Is this all there is?" He pushed it away immediately. Of course this was enough. He had security, predictability, no surprises, no risks, no disruptions. He was comfortable. And isn't that what everyone wants? So he drove home, walked into his house, sat in his chair, turned on the TV, and that voice went quiet. But it never really left. It just learned to whisper instead of shout. Søren Kierkegaard wrote that the most common form of despair is not being who you are. And that's exactly what comfort did to this man. It allowed him to slowly, gently, mercifully forget who he actually was, beneath all the routines and safety nets. Comfort is seductive because it's easy. It doesn't ask anything of you. It doesn't challenge you or stretch you or wake you up. It just keeps you sedated in a life that's perfectly fine. Never terrible, never extraordinary, just fine. And fine is the slowest way to die. This man was comfortable in his job, even though it drained the light from his eyes. He was comfortable in his routines, even though they made him feel like he was living the same year over and over. He was comfortable in his solitude, even though loneliness was eating him alive from the inside. Comfort became his cage, and he called it safety. Here's what he learned too late. Happiness doesn't live in comfort. Happiness lives in growth, in challenge, in the electricity of not knowing what's going to happen next, in the terror and thrill of trying something that might not work, in the aliveness of actually living instead of existing on autopilot. Think about when you felt most alive. Was it in your comfort zone? Was it during predictable, safe, routine moments? Or was it when you were scared but moving forward anyway? When you were trying something new, taking a risk, pushing past your edges? This man stayed in relationships that were comfortable but loveless. He kept friendships that were easy but shallow. He maintained a lifestyle that looked good but felt hollow. And he told himself wanting more was greedy, that contentment meant accepting whatever life dealt him. But contentment and resignation aren't the same thing. True contentment comes from living fully, from honoring yourself, from recognizing the person in the mirror. What he had wasn't contentment. It was surrender. The slow, quiet giving up of dreams in exchange for the promise that nothing would hurt too much if nothing ever mattered too much. The years passed in a comfortable blur. 50 became 60. 60 became 70. And somewhere along the way, he stopped noticing the sunset. He stopped hearing that voice asking, "Is this all there is?" Not because he found the answer, but because he learned to stop asking the question. At 78, sitting on that park bench, he can barely remember what it felt like to want something so badly it kept him awake at night. He can't recall the last time his heart raced with excitement instead of anxiety. He's forgotten what it feels like to be uncomfortable because you're growing rather than comfortable because you've stopped trying. Comfort killed him, not all at once, not dramatically, just slowly, gently, day by day, until there was nothing left of the person he could have been. Don't make his mistake. Don't confuse the numbness of routine with the peace of purpose. Don't choose the couch over the climb. Don't trade your one wild and precious life for the mediocre comfort of never being uncomfortable. If you're tired of letting routine lull you into mediocrity, if you're ready to feel alive again instead of just safe, then let this be the moment you choose growth over stagnation. Push yourself, take the risk, and move toward the life that makes your heart race. Growth over comfort. Number 5. He waited to be ready and died waiting. This man spent 60 years preparing for a life he never lived. At 29, he wanted to write. Not professionally, not for fame, just to write the stories living in his head, keeping him company during lonely nights. But first, he told himself, he needed to take classes, read every book on craft, understand structure, character development, plot arcs, themes. So he bought the books. They sat on his shelf, spines uncracked, while years ticked by. He was going to start, once he was ready. At 45, he thought about learning guitar. He'd walk past music stores and feel something stir, imagining his fingers on strings, creating something beautiful. But he didn't know music theory, couldn't read notes. He'd be starting from zero, and surely at his age, you needed to know the fundamentals first, right? So he bookmarked websites about music theory and told himself he'd begin once he understood the basics. At 53, he considered starting a blog about books he loved. He had thoughts, insights, connections he wanted to share. But who was he to write publicly? He needed to be more knowledgeable first. Read more. Understand more. Be more. So he kept reading, kept thinking, kept preparing for a start that never came. Bruce Lee said, "Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do." But this man never learned that knowledge without action is just expensive decoration. He collected information like others collect stamps, carefully, obsessively, and without ever putting any of it to use. At 78, he has a house full of books about things he never did. Guides to writing, music theory, photography, woodworking, cooking, languages, all the things he was going to do once he was ready. Each book is a monument to a life he prepared for but never lived. Each pristine page is evidence of motion without movement, intention without action. Here's the devastating truth he learned too late. You don't get ready and then start. You start, and the starting makes you ready. You don't learn to swim by reading about swimming. You don't learn to write by studying writing. You don't learn to live by preparing for life. You jump in the water and flail and swallow some water, and gradually, awkwardly, beautifully, you learn. Every master was once a disaster. Every expert was once embarrassingly incompetent. Every person you admire for their skill went through a phase where they absolutely sucked at what they do. The difference between them and this man: they were willing to suck. They were willing to be bad at something, to make mistakes, to look foolish, to fail repeatedly while learning. This man was so terrified of being imperfect that he never allowed himself to be a beginner. And if you're never a beginner, you're never anything else either. You stay frozen at the starting line, convinced that everyone else was just born knowing what they know. But they weren't. They just started before they were ready. They took the first terrible, shaky step, and then another and another. They learned by doing, not by endlessly preparing to do. What are you waiting to be ready for? That business idea. You'll never feel ready. That creative project. You'll never know enough. That new skill. You'll never be prepared. The readiness you're waiting for is a mirage that keeps moving further away the more you chase it. This man waited to write until he understood story structure perfectly, but story structure reveals itself through writing. He waited to play music until he understood theory, but theory makes sense through playing. He waited to share his thoughts until he felt authoritative, but authority comes from the practice of sharing. The cruel irony? He actually would have been ready if only he'd started. 6 decades of doing would have made him remarkably skilled at dozens of things. But 6 decades of preparing left him skilled at exactly one thing: waiting. You will never feel completely ready. Never. And that's not a bug. It's a feature. The feeling of being unready is the signal that you're about to grow, about to learn, about to become more than you currently are. It's not a stop sign. It's the starting gun. Stop waiting for permission from some future version of yourself. That version doesn't exist yet. It can only exist through doing the thing you're waiting to be ready for. Start messy. Start incomplete. Start scared. Just start. If you've been hiding behind preparation, waiting for the perfect moment, if you're tired of letting readiness be an excuse for inaction, then this is your signal to jump in, flail, fail, and grow. Starting before I'm ready. Number 6. He believed success meant never failing. At 31, this man had an idea for a small business. Nothing revolutionary, just something he believed in, something that made his pulse quicken when he thought about it. He drew up plans, researched, prepared. But then the doubt came. What if it fails? What if I lose money? What if people laugh? What if I'm not good enough? So he didn't launch. He couldn't bear the thought of failure, couldn't stomach the possibility of being wrong. So he chose guaranteed safety over possible success. And his idea died quietly in a drawer where no one would ever see it fail. At 44, he wanted to learn public speaking. He had things to say, insights he'd gathered, perspectives he wanted to share. But the thought of standing in front of people, potentially stumbling over words, possibly freezing up, maybe looking foolish, it was unbearable. What if he failed? So he stayed silent, and his voice remained unheard for another 34 years. Thomas Edison said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." But this man never understood that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the pathway to it. He thought successful people were the ones who never failed, when the truth is, successful people are just the ones who failed more times than everyone else and kept going anyway. Here's what this man got catastrophically wrong. He believed that failure was a final verdict, a permanent label, a scarlet letter that would mark him forever as inadequate. He thought one failure would define him, would prove all his fears true, would confirm what he secretly suspected, that he wasn't good enough, smart enough, capable enough. But failure isn't a noun, it's a verb. It's not what you are, it's what happens temporarily while you're learning. Every failure is just feedback, data, information about what doesn't work so you can adjust and try again. Failure is only permanent if you stop trying. Think about how you learned to walk. You fell. Dozens of times, hundreds maybe. You stumbled, crashed, bumped your head, and got back up and tried again. You didn't think, well, I failed at walking, so I guess I'm a crawler for life. You just kept trying, because you didn't know that failure was supposed to stop you. You hadn't learned yet to be afraid of not being perfect on the first try. But somewhere along the way, this man learned to fear failure more than he desired success. He learned that looking foolish was worse than staying stuck. He learned that protecting his ego was more important than expanding his life. And that lesson cost him everything. The businesses he never started, some would have failed, yes, but some might have succeeded. Some might have grown into something beautiful. The chances he never took, some would have led nowhere, but some might have led to extraordinary places. The risks he never ran, some would have hurt, but some might have healed him in ways he never imagined. But he'll never know, because he chose the certainty of never failing over the possibility of ever succeeding. He chose protecting himself from embarrassment over giving himself a chance at fulfillment. He chose the safety of the shore over the adventure of the sea. At 78, he doesn't even remember most of the things he was so afraid of failing at. The specific fears that felt so massive at 31, forgotten. The embarrassment he was avoiding at 44, irrelevant. But what remains, what haunts him every single day, is the awareness of all the things he never tried because he couldn't guarantee success. Here's what nobody tells you about failure. It's temporary, but regret is forever. A failed attempt lasts a moment. The regret of never attempting lasts a lifetime. Failure might sting your pride for a few days or weeks, but living with what if will gnaw at your soul for decades. The most successful people you admire, they've failed more spectacularly than you've ever tried. They've embarrassed themselves, lost money, made mistakes, looked foolish, gotten it wrong, and they kept going. Not because they're braver or stronger or more talented, but because they understood that failure is the price of admission for a life worth living. You're going to fail at things. That's not a maybe, it's a guarantee. The question isn't whether you'll fail. The question is, will you fail while trying to build something meaningful, or will you fail by never trying at all? Because make no mistake, not trying is also a failure. It's just a failure that comes with zero chance of success. This man's greatest failure wasn't any of the things he was afraid to try and mess up. His greatest failure was believing that avoiding failure was the same as achieving success. Stop treating failure like death. Start treating it like education. Every failure means you tried. Every mistake means you dared. Every stumble means you were moving instead of hiding. If you've spent too long fearing failure, if you've been hiding from the possibility of looking foolish, then this is the moment to flip the script. Own your attempts, embrace your mistakes, dare to fail while living fully. Failure is just feedback. Number 7. He forgot that time doesn't wait for perfect plans. There was always tomorrow. That's what this man told himself for 60 years. Tomorrow he'd start. Tomorrow he'd change. Tomorrow he'd finally live the life he kept postponing. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. Next month became next year. And next year became never, wrapped in the comfortable lie that time was infinite and his tomorrow would always be waiting. At 56, his mother got sick, really sick. And suddenly he realized all those visits he'd been meaning to make, all those conversations he'd been planning to have, all those I love yous he'd been saving for the right moment. They were running out of time. She died 3 months later, and he stood at her funeral, realizing that all his perfect plans for honoring her, for making her proud, for spending quality time together had died with her. Time had stopped waiting, and he hadn't noticed until it was too late. At 62, his body started betraying him. Small things at first: knees that ached, back that stiffened, energy that disappeared earlier each day. The hiking trip he'd been planning since his 30s. Now it hurt to climb stairs. The dance lessons he'd always meant to take. Now he needed help getting out of chairs. The adventures he'd been saving for retirement. Retirement came with a body that was too tired, too broken, too late. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short space of time, but that we waste much of it." But this man didn't invest his time. He hoarded it, waiting for the perfect moment to spend it, and it depreciated to nothing while he waited. Here's the brutal truth that took him 78 years to learn. Time is the only currency that matters, and you're spending it whether you're paying attention or not. Every day you wake up, you're trading a piece of your finite life for whatever you choose to do, or not do, with those hours. And unlike money, once spent, you can never earn it back. This man lived like he had unlimited time. He treated his years like they were refundable, like he could always exchange them later for better experiences, more meaningful moments, fuller living. He saved his dreams for someday, his love for the right person, his courage for when he felt ready, his life for when everything aligned perfectly. But time wasn't waiting for his perfect plan. Time was just passing. While he was busy making excuses, time was doing its only job, moving forward. While he was postponing and planning and perfecting, his years were disappearing like sand through fingers he forgot to close. This man had a friend he'd been meaning to call for 17 years. 17 years. They'd had a falling out, nothing major, just one of those things. He kept thinking he'd reach out, he'd bridge that gap, he'd reconnect, eventually. And then one random Tuesday, he saw the obituary. His friend had died, and all those years of eventually turned into never. The conversation they were supposed to have, the friendship they were supposed to repair, the forgiveness they were supposed to exchange, gone. Not because it was impossible, but because he kept treating time like it was infinite. At 78, he can calculate exactly how much time he wasted. The decades spent in jobs he hated, waiting for the right moment to quit. The years spent alone, waiting for the perfect person to come along. The months spent planning trips he never took, writing books he never started, building relationships he never initiated. Time didn't steal these things from him. He gave them away moment by moment, in exchange for the false comfort of later. You think you have time. You think you'll get around to it. You think there's always tomorrow. And maybe there is. But maybe there isn't. And even if there is a tomorrow, it won't have today's opportunities, today's people, today's exact circumstances. Tomorrow will have its own demands, its own distractions, its own reasons to postpone. The things you're putting off, they're not waiting patiently for you to be ready. They're dying slowly while you procrastinate. That relationship, growing colder with each delayed conversation. That dream, becoming less possible with each passing year. That person you love, they're aging, changing, living their life, whether you show up or not. Time is not on your side. It's not against you either. It's just indifferent, moving at its steady pace, completely unconcerned with your plans, your fears, your excuses. It will give you today, right now, this moment, and then it will move on, with or without your participation. This man spent 60 years waiting for perfect timing that never arrived, and now, at 78, he'd give anything, for just one more chance to be young and scared and imperfect, but actually living. He'd trade all his perfect plans for one messy, beautiful, real attempt at the life he kept postponing. But he can't. His perfect timing never came, and now his time is gone. If you've been putting off what matters most, if you've been waiting for the perfect moment that will never come, then claim this moment as yours, right now. My time is now. So there he sits, 78 years old, on a park bench, with a heart full of regrets and a life half-lived. He spent 60 years being perfect, and perfection gave him exactly what it promised. Nothing. No mistakes, no failures, no embarrassments, but also no risks, no adventures, no joy, no meaning, no life. He was so busy being perfect that he forgot to be human. And now, at the end, he'd trade every perfect moment for one imperfect one that actually mattered. You're not him yet. You still have time. Not unlimited time, not infinite chances, but enough time, if you start right now, in this moment, to choose differently. You can decide that perfection is a prison you're done living in. You can accept that messy action beats perfect planning every single time. You can understand that the life you're waiting to be ready for is already here, already happening, already slipping away while you hesitate. This man would give everything to be where you are right now, to have the years you have, the chances you have, the possibilities you have. He'd trade all his perfect plans for one more shot at living imperfectly but authentically. Don't waste what he wishes he could have back. Your life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. This is the show. Every day you wake up is a gift you're spending whether you choose to or not. The question is, will you spend it building something real, or will you spend it waiting for perfect conditions that never arrive? Stop chasing perfection. Start chasing life. Messy, imperfect, scary, beautiful life. Take the risks. Make the mistakes. Fail forward. Try before you're ready. Choose growth over comfort. Let go of other people's opinions. Stop treating failure like death and start treating it like education. And most of all, stop acting like you have all the time in the world. Because you don't. None of us do. 60 years from now, when you're the one on the park bench looking back at this moment, the only question that will matter is, did you live, really live, or did you spend your precious, unrepeatable life trying to be perfect? Don't be him. Don't let perfection steal your one chance at a real life. Start now. Start messy. Start imperfect. Just start. I will live imperfectly but fully.